Now, Washington Mornings on the Mall. 105.9 FM. And AM 630. WMAL.
Well, happy Friday to you, 637 on WMAL. Brian Neiman, Brian Wilson. The Washington Nationals have the best record in all of baseball, and they do play in the city, right? They're the District of Columbia's baseball team, right?
That's right.
And we have a first-place team that has a chance to go to the playoffs in the World Series.
Who saw that coming?
And we have this guy named Steven Strasburg, who has been talked about endlessly for the last 2 years, and he's really good, right?
Right.
But they're going to not allow him to play for the final 2 weeks of the season and not allow him to pitch in the playoffs. Why would they do such a thing? Well, they say it's for medical reasons. So we asked Dr. David Geier to come on. He's a sports injury expert, orthopedic surgeon, and director of sports medicine department at the University of South Carolina. Dr. Geier, how are you? Thanks for coming on.
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
All right, so Steven Strasburg, the ace pitcher for the Nationals, had Tommy John surgery last year. I think people hear Tommy John surgery and not exactly sure what that is. What is Tommy John surgery, and how difficult of a process is it to come back from?
So the Tommy John surgery is done. It makes a new ligament on the inside of your elbow. So when you injure your elbow, and it's from basically throwing over and over again, it's an overuse injury where the ligament on the side of your elbow closest to the midline of your body gradually frays and eventually ruptures. What that surgery does is essentially it takes a tendon, usually from your wrist, and it makes a new ligament. The problem with that surgery is that you're making a new ligament, but it takes a lot of time for that ligament to become and that tendon to become as strong as what the normal ligament was. It takes about 12 to 14 months. It's a lot of work getting the motion and the strength back and things like that, but it does have very good success rates once somebody finally gets back, gets through the rehab process, has a very, very good success rate as far as getting back to pitching at the same level.
I've actually heard that when the healing is done and after the rehab, that actually you may be have a better elbow than you had before.
Well, that's actually one of the misconceptions. It's true that they feel better, but that you have to remember that so many of these pitchers have been hurting now for years before the ligament finally gave, that they're comparing it to what it was right before they finally had surgery and not back to what it was when they were normal.
All right, so what's the process on this? Is there a book? Is there a Bible on how you handle a pitcher after he has Tommy John surgery? Then the Nationals have apparently put the number at 160 to 180 innings per year. What do you think about that number and how it's been used by other teams and doctors?
Unfortunately, there's no right answer. I do applaud them in general for trying to protect him and prevent him from injury. The problem is, like I said, the success rates of this operation are really good, somewhere 88 to 92% at the major league level. So we don't have that much data on the pitchers that fail it and what risk factors there are for re-tearing it again. Is it 160 innings, 180 innings? Is it just this season or future seasons? Or is it mechanics? There's a lot of different factors, and we just don't have enough data to know. So teams are basically just using their best judgments, looking for whatever that they see as signs that it may be time to shut somebody down. We do know that if a pitcher re-tears the ligament and the surgery and needs a second one, the success rates of returning to pitching are much, much lower. So you do everything you can to prevent that from happening.
Yeah, but as my friend Mr. Neiman has pointed out, we're not talking about that many more starts.
Yeah, we're talking maybe 4 or 5 more starts. So 28, 35 innings at most. I mean, is that going to make a difference here?
Yeah, that's the problem. We really don't know. Very likely a pitcher with a certain number of extra innings might do just fine, and that's the uncertain part of this, and really the unfortunate part. I wish I could tell you that there's a magic number, and above that number somebody's much more likely. We just don't know, quite honestly.
Well, there does seem to be a magic number.
Or is it a type of pitch or something like that?
But there does seem to be a magic number. It's 160 innings.
Well, for the Nationals it is, 160 to 180.
That's what you hear.
Exactly. That's what they and their doctors apparently have decided would be right for him. And from what I'm reading about him and Dr. Yoakum's decision, it sounds like it's something to do with, it's his first full season back, and he hasn't had a full season in the major leagues. And then it sounds like there's some concern and probably rightly so, about not just re-tearing the ligament, but is there a chance of an increased risk of shoulder injury in that early time back? So that's the decision that they came to. And I think if most orthopedic surgeons, while yes, it's somewhat of an arbitrary number, there's no gold standard to really say this is the right point to shut somebody down.
Okay, but it seems to me that they're all right with a guy coming back for a year, doing 160, doing 180, and then the following year he's allowed to go as long as he wants. So is it magically healed?
Yeah, that'll be one of the questions asked: is why just this year? Why not every year?
And so, is there an answer to that? I mean, does it get stronger after a year, and after you've had the surgery a year later? If it's made it that far, then you feel like the ligament's strong enough and it'll last, or is that just arbitrary as well?
Well, that's the argument, that after that first full season back, that ligament is probably fully incorporated. All the surrounding muscles, not just around the elbow, but the shoulder, the core muscles, the muscles of your trunk and lower extremities, have essentially recovered to the point that you're at, where you're going to be. There has been some question, and I'm not a pitching coach, but there's been some question about Strasburg's mechanics, and the argument is that if he's got a mechanical issue, like his delivery, and puts unnecessary stress on his elbow, then maybe you should limit him every year, but that would be more of a discussion with pitching coaches. But you could certainly make the argument about, do you protect him at least to a certain extent every year, and then if you do, how do you do that?
One last question, we'll let you go. It seems to me that there are a lot of pitchers out there who are having Tommy John surgery. Is there a reason why that there seems to be a spike in the number of pitchers that need it? And what about for parents right now who have kids? Is there a reason why so many pitchers are in need of Tommy John surgery these days?
Absolutely. It all comes down to overuse, especially at the high school and youth levels. We're seeing these kids pitch more and more. They're pitching throughout the season and not getting 2 to 3 months a year off. And these injuries used to just occur among pro pitchers, but it's really trickling down into younger and younger ages. And they see these players like Strasburg on TV, and they're getting surgery, and they get back to pitch, and they think that they can do that themselves. But we do know that high school pitchers, even college pitchers, but high school and youth pitchers have much lower success rates at ever getting back to baseball if they suffer this injury. And so we need to do everything we can to prevent it.
All right, Dr. David Geier.